I'm delighted to present the Cambridge Computer Lab Ring Product of the Year Award for 2020 to Anvil. Congratulations on winning the Cambridge Computer Lab Ring Product of the Year Award for 2020. Would you like to introduce yourselves and Anvil?
Sure. So my name is Meredydd. I actually came to the computer lab somewhat late. I was a natural scientist for undergrad, but then did my PhD in the lab with Simon Moore. And I have known Ian since the first day we turned up at Keys in 2004.
I've been a computer scientist since I met Meredydd in 2004 at the beginning of undergrad. I did my undergrad at Keys and then went on to do a PhD with Peter Robinson in the Rainbow Group at the Computer Lab and various postdocs in the Rainbow Group and the DTG since then, during which we founded Anvil.
So we've always both been tinkerers. I think we bonded fairly rapidly over a sort of compulsive building things, although I have to say I was impressed because I had never built a dancing fountain out of washing machine valves in my parents' back garden, which Ian had done before he even turned up at Cambridge. But we both always used and valued the sorts of tools that allow you to tinker something into existence. And over the course of PhDs, where mine was in building usable programming systems and Ian's was in human-computer interaction, there would be periodic rants about the amount that we'd lost, really, since we started tinkering with these things. Because if you cast yourself back all the way to the mid-90s, there were actually a lot of tools available where someone who was, a hobbyist, knew how to program a little bit, could pick up something like Visual Basic or Delphi and throw together an application that works like anything else on your computer, which in those days was a Windows desktop application, and people did. And by the time we were finishing our PhDs in 2012, 2013, this was emphatically not the case, because all the action was on the web. And on the web, you need a baffling variety of programming languages and frameworks to get anything done at all. Your typical loadout is about 5 different programming languages, which, is either a fun challenge or utterly infuriating. And for me, it's always been on the utterly infuriating end. And we had occasionally complained to each other about this sort of thing. And sort of independently of that, we had got into the habit of meeting up to tinker with things, which that pattern started, I believe, one rainy afternoon when Ian wandered into my office when I was trying to focus on writing up my thesis and asked whether he could get his, whether I had any ideas for maybe how he could get the computer to play the other half of a piano duet with him, like following as he sped up and slowed down and went back and practiced on things. At which point I promptly erased all my thesis planning from my whiteboard. We spent a very happy afternoon planning this and started sort of meeting up from time to time in Ian's living room to tinker with things. And in retrospect, it seems really obvious that those two flows would converge, but at the time it really wasn't even slightly obvious. We just were hanging around building things and also had strong opinions on the subject of why the modern world makes it too difficult to build things. I mean, Ian had done some work in this area in the past in the context of things like the Sutton Trust Summer School.
So for that, we used to run these summer schools where we would get 17-year-olds in and we would give them their first taste of programming. And it's changed somewhat nowadays because they all know how to program already. But back then, there was this system that had been built by David Ingram a long time ago that was a completely custom programming environment that had its own entire own language, its own syntax, and it had to run on a particular version of Linux that was no longer supported by the managed computing service, and it took us a week to get it up and running every time. And we had to teach this programming language that the students were guaranteed never to see again. And we sort of sat down and said, well, I'm sure we could do better than this. We should really be teaching them Python, but it would be an absolute nightmare to actually get Python running properly everywhere. So why can't we do it in the browser? Oh, well, there's this open source project that allows you to run quite simple Python code in the browser. So we put together this thing and ran the Sutton Trust Summer School using a Python-based system for a couple of years. And that was very cool. And really, as far as I'd thought about it, it was just an interesting side project. Meredydd then sent me a message one day on Google Hangouts that said, a thing that should exist, VB6 for the web. And I said, well, that's a good idea. We could even use Python. And then Anvil happened. And at the time, as Meredydd said, we were tinkering with other projects. And I should point out that we did, in fact, succeed in getting my piano to play the other half of Piano Duets. But back of the envelope calculations revealed that there were not enough people in the world who wanted to play piano duets with themselves to make this a viable business proposition. So we started playing with what would become Anvil. And we did it in the evenings, after work. And then we started realizing that this actually might be a real thing. And so we started spending every Tuesday on it. And we would spend all day on Tuesday working on this thing. Of course, eventually we had to turn this into an actual company, and it was not obvious that Anvil would be the only product that this company ever made. And so the company is called the Tuesday Project Limited, and hopefully will be forever. So that's where it came from. But as yet, Anvil is the only product.
So what's the elevator pitch for Anvil then today?
So instead of the massive hairball of complexity in current web applications, build web applications with nothing but Python. So that's a UI toolkit in Python in the browser, a drag and drop designer for it, Python code running in the browser, Python code running in the server, one-click deployment. It's just write some Python and we will take care of the rest. The first time we posted it on Reddit, I think, was 2016. And at this point, we were still sort of working a little bit part-time on it. Logical Tuesday had expanded to cover about 2 or 3 physical days a week. And by that point, I had moved into the office Ian had been occupying for most of a decade in the Rainbow Group. But we still weren't really sure about this until it went onto Reddit, and basically the world bit our hand off and we went, oh, I see, this is a real thing. Since then, we have had everybody from tiny startups that couldn't, with data scientists who didn't even know HTML and JavaScript, up to companies so large we certainly can't mention them on a video that's going to get broadcast, building their line of business code, their products, their internal utilities, their data analysis with Anvil.
Amazing. And so what's next for Anvil? Anything exciting coming soon?
Well, we have more than doubled the size of the team in the last year. So more people using it, making Anvil easier to use, and making it bigger, better, faster, stronger. One of the wonderful things about working on something like Anvil is that it sort of scratches a lot of itches at once. We get to simultaneously solve interesting, crunchy pieces of computer science problems. We hack on Python to JavaScript compilers. We invent version control merging for drag and drop editors, which is an unsolved problem. And everything from that to the very HCI end of, we sit there and we watch people use a programming tool and we identify the places where they stub their toe and then we fix it. And let me tell you, as a programmer who has had strong opinions for many years about the unreasonable complexity and user unfriendliness of the programming environment for the biggest platform on earth, it is deeply satisfying to spot a problem and go, okay, we are just going to solve that. Yes, it is too difficult to store secrets in your applications. The existing systems are extremely baroque and complicated. We are just going to sit down and fix it. And then, go next door and chat to people in the security group and see what they think of it and come back and make sure that it's properly fixed. And then it stays fixed. And that is really satisfying. It's a sort of, it's almost cathartic, the ability to go on a rampage against all of the bits of web development we most hated and produce something.
It's a delightful system to work on as well, because there are bits of all the corners of computer science you can think of in there somewhere. And we spend a lot of our time now actually running the business and working out how to grow the business and doing the marketing and the sales and the support and all of that kind of thing. But we do still spend a lot of our time hacking on the code. And one of our employees is currently transitioning to being a full-time developer without a formal computer science background, and is picking up a lot of the code as she goes along. And one of the things that's been an absolute delight to say is, well, whichever bit of computer science you're thinking about today, we can probably find you a corner of Anvil that demonstrates that concept, and you can go and poke at it and see what it does. And so it really is a delight to work on.
Nice. Well, a well-deserving winner then. Thank you so much for sharing the Anvil story today. It's been fascinating.
Thank you.